What's up, guys? Welcome to the Wisdom Coaches Podcast, hosted by the Legacy Track Club, Coach Rabo and Coach Falting here. We are back on Zoom, Coach Falting. We've had some technical difficulties on our last couple through Google Meet and recording it. So the only downside to Zoom is we only get 40 minutes, so we're going to make this episode count.
Yeah, I think people would be fascinated at how professional this podcast sounds compared to how professional it is put together.
That's very true. I am not a sound engineer, and I have been having to Google a lot of stuff to figure out how to make us not sound like we're underwater on the last couple of episodes. And so yeah, we're fighting the good fight. We're gonna make this work.
That's right. Just pearls of wisdom coming, hopefully in higher quality sound.
Absolutely. Well, good deal. Well, we got a couple of things we want to bring and talk to you about, some latest, greatest news. I think I'm gonna let Coach Felton get started off. You sent me a very interesting article earlier this week. We just keep getting more and more in the realm of super shoes, and this was something that is new, at least to me. I think Under Armour might have had like something a little similar, but why don't you explain what this is?
Yeah, I got a little thing that popped up on Facebook for a Kickstarter campaign for a maximalist running shoe with sensors in it that would evaluate your running form, your cadence, your paces, those kind of things, and then go one step further and actually provide you like AI coaching based on all of these things. And so I know we've seen some things in the past, like your Garmin watches and things that kind of tell you like, hey, this is what pace you're running in, or this is how long you need to recover. But now they're trying to take it directly to the feet and even kind of remove the human element from it and just have an AI coach working with you. It's also a subscription model, so where you pay money for those sensors to be read by the AI as you go from day to day. And then you have the options when you get a new pair of shoes to either get new sensors and start the process over, or remove your sensors from the previous shoe, put them in the current shoe, and allow AI to keep tracking off of that data. So, just thought that was interesting. I've seen a lot of places in the world where consumers no longer need to interact with people. Most recently, Torchy's. I went to order a taco and had to order everything through a machine and not speak to an adult at all. But it looks like now they're trying to get into the coaching gig with that. So you kind of wonder, what that looks like and how necessary you and I might be in the future.
I think this brings up a lot of like very interesting things. Like you mentioned, AI is just becoming more and more prevalent in all aspects of life, but in coaching as well. Strava has an AI feature that is completely garbage, where like it'll be like, "Oh, here's the run you did," and it gives you the most vague, just kind of rundown. And some friends and I were talking about it, and I said, "Well, I guarantee you, what they're doing is they're training this AI right now, and at some point in the future." They're going to be offering AI coaching plans that you have to pay for. And then they actually joined up with Runna to offer some coaching packages, which I'm sure Runna probably is doing something similar with AI inspired coaching and stuff like that. In addition to that, like you mentioned with the watches and stuff like that, Garmin's, of course, you can pull up and it'll tell you how your run was and what your suggested next workout should be. A lot of other watch companies do this. Which is kind of funny because we've talked about this. I think this is even in the blog post we have on the site where one of our runners, Brett Leon, ran the Louisiana Marathon in January. Ran a personal best, ran 250, I believe, maybe 251. So about 4 or 5 minutes off his previous best of 255. And Garmin told him he was unproductive that day. So the man
Right.
PR'd, ran, qualified for Boston, and was told by his watch AI that he had had an unproductive day. So God only knows what massive workout it gave him the following day. And if you didn't know any better, you would think, oh, well, I just roll right out of this marathon and start training for the next one. So the shoe model was very interesting with Kickstarter. Like a lot of them had different tiers. One was like you got the shoes and the program for a year. One was two shoes and the program for a year, which if you listen to our last episode, you know that swapping shoes can help with injury reduction, although technically, as we talked about, you want to have two different types of shoe because that helps with preventing injury. Um, and the thing that kills me, and I think that like that makes it, the subscription model seems dumb for this, and I'll tell you why. If you're telling me I can pay a subscription and have an AI create me a plan, then I can probably pay a coach monthly or a
Right.
subscription to create me a plan, and it's not going to be AI based. So at that point, why wouldn't I just pay a coach to do this? Because I can almost guarantee you in any instance, at least the state that we are in, that if you find a coach worth their salt, and even a lot of coaches not worth their salt, they're going to be able to provide you a better training plan than AI is going to be able to provide you. And more than that, they're going to be able to give you better instruction, better feedback, and better advice than AI is going to be able to give you because anyone can create a chat GPT training plan and follow it, and you'll probably get some decent results, but you're not going to have that personal touch of a coach who's able to tell you like, hey, you need to back off this week. You've had a lot going on, or hey, like you've been sick. Let's not do this workout today. Let's give your body a few days to rest. And those are the things that A, help you improve faster, B, prevent injury. And I don't see that coming from sensors in your shoe.
Right. Well, and a couple of things with that, So first off, the idea of like a Chat GPT training plan. Um, any plan for a distance runner will produce some sort of gains for some amount of time. All right. So, like, if you have been running forever and you made any kind of tweak to your running, you could get an improvement. Is it going to be a long term gain? Probably not. Is it going to help you reach your potential? Probably not. But like if, Rabo, you run hundreds and hundreds of miles. If we switched your training to 20 miles a week, short and fast, you're going to get a bump in a 5K. Are you going to get a bump in the ultras? No, you're going to die in the ultras. But
Yeah.
but can you PR in the 5K from that? Absolutely. Can you sustain that long term for you and keep improving the 5Ks? No. So the Chat GPT plans are a quick fix, but not a long term fix. When I went to the Garmin Heartland Distance Summit this weekend, and the representative Garmin was there, and he's like, "Look, one of our biggest problems with our watches is that people don't understand how to use them. Like, so, we talk about this all the time, just enough information to be dangerous. If you're not wearing your Garmin watch all the time, it's not registering how you recover. So you could do a tempo run on Monday, and then it could say you need 80 hours to recover because you didn't wear that watch on Saturday and Sunday for it to track your heart rate. So it's seeing this really aggressive thing come out of nowhere, and then thinking, man, that must have put a really big toll on your body. You're not going to wear these shoes for every single thing you do. So like already there's going to be a slight disadvantage in what it can tell you because it's not going to be able to register different things that you're doing in your daily process, and nor would you want to wear like your running shoes, your trainers
Yeah.
all day long. Bad things are going to come from that, so people need to understand that too. And then lastly, what AI can't do is I can't tell AI, hey, my shin is hurting today, what do you think I should do about it? I can't tell AI, hey, I'm really nervous about this race tomorrow. What advice could you give me? And so no matter how much they try to create something to streamline coaching and replace it, and it's all down to the bottom dollar. Like some of these things are never going to be replaceable. Okay,
Yeah.
the experience and wisdom of coaches, and those interactions. We write training plans all the time for athletes, through our website. But I think the biggest bang for their buck is the fact that they also text or call us to ask for small details about that or some advice about a race. I think that makes just as much of a difference as the, hey, you're going to do, 4 mile tempo run today, followed by, 4 by 200 meters at mile pace. And AI, I don't think can contribute that part of it.
No, and we've talked a lot. Coaching is two things. It's science and it's art. And a lot of people don't really get that. And a lot of people, they get the science part, and the science part's the easy part, and that's saying something because there's a lot of stuff that goes into the science of running. And AI can do the science part because AI can comb through thousands of, periodicals and studies and things like that, and it can go and it can pull, training plans that it finds online. But, you've talked about this in one of your summits that you've done, I think at the Louisiana coaching clinic, where you're like, hey, You want to run a sub 4 minute mile? Here's Jim Ryan's training plan. This is what
Yeah.
this guy did every single day. He ran like 5 or 10 miles every morning, and then every afternoon were intervals on the track of a different variety. And if any high school kid did that now, they would probably snap in two. And but there's science there. Like that, this is exactly what he did. We all know the same things that will turn a good distance runner. You need moderately high volume of mileage. You need to build the aerobic base. You need to have fast stuff introduced in. You need long runs. We know like the puzzle pieces, and those are all there. There's an art to putting it together, and that's something that humans have trouble with, and that's something you have to do differently for every single athlete, and that's part of the coaches figuring that out. And that's something that AI is never really going to be able to replicate. You might get some things if you can sit there and feed a ton of your past data into it and then ask it what to do, but even then, it's not going to be the same. And you brought up a great point with those shoes. Like, yeah, if you're not wearing them all the time, and like if you're not wearing them all the time, it might not know, I've for friends who are surgeons and they're like, I was on my feet 10 hours today just standing doing a surgery. So I'm not going to go do a workout tonight because my legs are trashed from just standing for 10 hours. And the shoes aren't going to know that. They're going to be like, no, you need to go out and do, 5 by mile at 10K pace tonight. So yeah, it's just it's not there. I don't know that it will ever 100% be there. It's an interesting concept. It's kind of a novelty to me more than anything
Right.
else, but I still think it's no substitute for a coach, especially if you're paying us. If I bought these shoes for $200 and then I got the coaching from then on, I would be more inclined to consider it. But if I'm still having to pay $50 a month for this program, I could just go pay a coach $100 a month and not have to deal with that.
Right. Now, that being said, as I transition to our next topic, there is a huge amount of benefit going on with technology and running right now.
Yep.
And we got to just witness, on Thursday, an incredible attempt that involved a lot of changes in technology, and even race strategy and such things and stuff. So I'm gonna let you introduce, our second topic and kind of transition in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of people are very familiar with Breaking Two. So this is where Nike came together with a couple of different other companies. Ineos, I believe, was one of them, who also sponsors like a Tour de France team. And they were trying to figure out if they could have a male runner break the 2 hour marathon barrier. And so they had two events. The first event was on like a Formula One track, and they had three gentlemen that they took, trained, a lot of science behind it. The super shoes kind of came out of this or were heavily modified and featured in this, and a lot of different things. In the first one they fell a little short. Kipchoge wound up running I think like 25 seconds, so like 2 hours and 25 seconds or something. If he'd have been 1 second faster per mile, he'd have got it. And so they kind of jettisoned the other two guys and just focused on Kipchoge because the other two had missed the mark by a decent bit, and he came back, I think maybe 6 months, a year later, and did finally run under two. Had a whole town of pacers, and they were running back and forth down this one road. Put a lot of money into it, and they accomplished their goal, and it was pretty impressive. I saw something that said it was about a 1.6% improvement in what he did. Not an official world record, but it was more of like, hey, is this something that's possible? So Nike decided that they were going to do this as well for the women's mile record. So the current women's mile record officially stands at 4:07 and some change, run by Faith Kipyegon. I believe that's how you say her last name. Um, and they thought, no woman has broken the 4 minute mile, something that men did back in the 50s with Sir Roger Bannister. And so they're like, well, we think that Faith can do this. Like they had a study that showed that they thought that if they had the perfect pacing, the perfect weather, she had good training, that she was more than capable of running um, under four for the mile. So shaving essentially 8 seconds off, or 2 seconds per lap for this race, which I believe something I saw was saying it was closer to a 4% improvement compared to Kipchoge's one. I think it was three and some change. So yeah, they put this together. I would say this had a little bit maybe less fanfare. It did have a kind of a documentary on Prime about this. I had seen some things about it on social media and just happened to see something on Instagram that morning, Thursday morning, showing that they were going to do it, and so managed to pull up the live stream that Nike had on YouTube. And Similar thing, they had a squad of male pacers out there, a couple of female pacers as well. They had a kind of a formation they were running in. Faith got new track spikes. She got a new like suit essentially that Nike had made that was aerodynamic. Got a new sports bra that Nike made. All kinds of stuff to help her run faster. They had the lights on the track as well. And she went out and ran a what would be a new world record time, although it's not a official run. But 4:06, I believe, improved somewhere around the second, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less. So well short of their goal. This is going to sound a little rough. Bear with me. It was a extremely impressive run. I'm not going to throw dirt on this accomplishment. She still ran a faster time than she had already run. But quite honestly, to me, her 4:07 is more impressive than this because it was a run in the actual race without all the fanfare, the hoopla, the pacers, and all of that stuff. So, um, yeah, quite an accomplishment. I think it's something that they're probably going to go back to the drawing board and keep working on. But still got 7 seconds or so that she has to shave off. And so, yeah, you and I talked about this a little bit, and it was just like their last one, they were putting a lot of stuff into wind tunnels and figuring out the proper formation for the Pacers to run, and it seemed to me a little hokey, the way how they had these Pacers set up and things like that. And so I don't know. It kind of if I were here, I might feel a little slighted compared to like what they did for the Breaking Two. It seemed like that maybe they put a little bit more into it than this. This seemed almost a little bit more like a PR stunt than anything.
Right. So, I'll go a couple of things there. Yes, I think there were, 20 some odd pacers that were involved in this. And when you watch the pacing group, you could see that there was a large number of them that were completely unnecessary. So I think there was maybe a lot put into Nike athletes having the opportunity to be a part of history if history was made, not necessarily contributing to history if history was made. I think if 4 minutes had been broken, I think there would have been a lot of thanking of Grant Fisher, Cooper Tier, Stewie from Australia. Those guys were right there, with Faith, swapping places, creating that little tunnel. But some 20 yards in front of them was a wall of guys that I'm not sure what they were doing. There were some pacers that were kind of behind that ran just to enjoy it and stepped off the track after 600 meters and stuff. So I think there was a part of it that was like, these guys are going to do the work. But if you're a Nike athlete and you want to come be a part of this celebration, by all means. So, I think that part was kind of trivial. They introduced a new spike that isn't necessarily legal yet. The weight of the entire mesh was the weight of a paperclip, is what I read.
Wow.
So we've made something that's extremely light. They introduced a new body suit that had these little beads on there that kind of allow the wind to kind of pass over in a different way. And they included those on leg sleeves and arm sleeves to also try to help, and when you think about some of these things, if you're an athlete that's not used to wearing arm sleeves and leg sleeves, I can understand that maybe being a little bit, different. Maybe it's constricting to what you're trying to do. I know when they were creating the suit with the internal sports bra, when they tested it, Faith said it was very, very tight on her chest late in runs. So it was very hard for her to breathe. So they thought that it really needed to be super tight to count for the wind part, but they had to make the adjustments of if our athlete's uncomfortable, she's not going to be able to run that, anyway. To me, there were some huge impressive things. 3 laps into that race, she was still on pace. She was 1 second over 4 minutes. And when she set the world record at 4:07, she actually closed in sub 60, so you think if she, closed in sub 60 here, she's probably right on there. So I think that the negative I saw was putting that much fanfare in something, it is going to have an impact on the athlete. I mean, they had a stadium of people just losing their minds. There was a 2-hour build up to the race. I think if you're not very controlled with your heartbeat and, and your breathing and stuff, if an event becomes too big for you, maybe sometimes that part gets the best of you. I saw her do her warm-up strides along with the 20 other athletes, and she just didn't look as comfortable really with the environment as she did after the race. Like you could almost see like kind of the stress and tension on her face, you know. And also at that clinic this weekend, they showed a video, of a field goal kicker, kicking a field goal as a timeout's called, and it going through the uprights, and then he has to come back and kick it again after the timeout, and he misses it, and it's like, well, during that timeout, all that routine he's used to doing, he's over on the sidelines, he's kicking into the net, he's, doing a prayer, he's walking out to the field. All that goes away during that timeout. In that timeout, you're just on the field waiting and thinking. And when you think about this race, all the ways that she's raced over the years and warmed up, maybe there's something to that, it wasn't the same. And so maybe some of that, burned some nervous energy that, maybe she could have used. On the positive side, our theme this summer, we keep talking about, it's like we want athletes to hug a cactus. We want athletes to get used to the uncomfortable, to fail and find success in it. And, there are so many people in this day and age that if they were trying to run the 4 minute mile and the clock hit 4 minutes and they weren't there, would have just jogged it in. If you look at high school kids, they get on the track, like I want to do a time trial. I want to try to PR. As soon as they miss that PR, it's just over. And, here she was, the clock hits 4. She's still got about, 50, 60 meters to go. You can tell every muscle in her is tight. She's still pushing through. She doesn't break 4 minutes. She's, 6 seconds off of it. And you watch her hit the ground, and for a minute you think she's crying or maybe she's like devastated. And really what she was doing is kind of just praying and then taking things in. And then you watch her hop up and she's like, look, I just knocked another second off this. Even failing, I was able to find something I knew I was capable of doing. And she's like, I believe, I knocked 1 second off of that. If I keep doing this, I think I've shown it's possible that somebody can break this 4 minute mile. We need more of that. We need more people trying, failing, and still seeing what they can get out of that failure so they can turn that into something positive. And that's the lasting moment that I'm taking from this is, I'll take everything else aside. A female just ran faster than any female's ever done before, missed her goal tremendously, and it should still be something that we're celebrating. And every athlete out there was celebrating with her. They were jogging the victory lap with her. They were hugging her. She was excited. Her daughter was excited. I think that's the biggest takeaway from this.
Yeah, yeah, no, like I said earlier, not taking away what she had done. My beef I think is a little bit more with, like we said, the production of it and kind of the fanfare and stuff. And I get, they're the sell apparel and shoes and everything else, and this is just kind of the catalyst for that. But I like what you said, I with the marathon, it was kind of one of those things where it was very difficult because you have to plan the logistics of it. It's such a long course, they originally did it on the F1 track, and they came in, they had a long stretch of road that they were just going back and forth on. This is on track. You could do this literally anywhere in the world for that matter. Obviously, there's some places that probably you'd want to do it more so than others. I was just up in Leadville this weekend. You probably don't want to try to do that in Leadville on the track because you're going to have a
or in Louisiana
or in Louisiana on
in
the track for
June.
that
Good
matter.
Lord.
So there's plenty of places you wouldn't want to do this, but I mean, we talked about this a little bit on Friday when we were on the phone. The thing about this is she can turn around and do this a week later. I mean, obviously, like you're not going to get the training in, but it's not like the marathon where it's like, all right, they're going to have one shot at this, and then realistically, it's another 6 months probably before they can come back and give this another shot. She could, go through a training block and attempt this 3 times a month if she really wanted to. And I think that's another thing, by, setting a date and having all the fanfare and all that, you do build a lot of that tension and a lot of that, like, oh man. And we've seen this time and time again with high school athletes, even where they get like, oh, the state meet, I'm going to run my like best run of my life on this one particular day, regardless of any external things or how I'm feeling. And that's kind of a recipe for, an upset because sometimes you do go out on the particular day, you do what you have a day and you perform your best. And sometimes you go out in those days and it's just not your day and you run the same thing maybe you've been running for the whole season. And it's not necessarily a failure by any means, but it wasn't, the best you could do. And so I think they could easily have this where she's just like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good this week. Let's try this on a track tomorrow. I'm
Right.
sure Nike could, pull some people and get some people in there to help her out. They don't need 20 people for this. I'm sure you could probably get that pacing strategy with five or six where they're blocking the wind for her. So I think that it just provides a lot of opportunity. I definitely don't think this will be something that's a one and done. And I definitely think she has the ability to get very close to that 4 minute mile, if not do it. But like you said, at the same time, like I think she's of the mind, and I think it was the same thing with Kipchoge, where it was like, if I'm not the person who does it, that's fine, but I want to show people that it is possible to do. And I think that's such a powerful mentality to have, where we're kind of in a world where everyone wants to be special and be the first to do something and maybe not share that glory. And I think very much they're just like, nope, like if I can get close and someone else sees that, and they're like, okay, like now I can go do it. I mean, Kelvin Kiptum before he passed away ran under 2:01 at the Chicago Marathon, almost broke 2 hours in an actual race. And I bet if Kipchoge hadn't have done the sub two, I don't think that would have happened. But him running that showed somebody else that it was possible. And you dang near had somebody do that in a race. And I think that it's only a matter of time before you have someone who does that. Just like I think it's only a matter of time before you have a woman that comes through and does this, whether that's Faith or whether that's somebody else.
Right. I mean, again, like the story happens in a lot of, um, you know, research science books and stuff about how, if you in the history of mankind, no one had ever broken, 4 minutes in the mile until Bannister did it. Within 1 year of Bannister doing it, like 52 guys did it. It was like the world just needed to see that it could exist for people to contemplate. I mean, before that, people thought you would die if you broke 4 minutes. People thought you would die if you broke 2 hours in the marathon. It's amazing how many times in this sport people think you'll actually die if you do something.
Yeah.
So like, and yet we all go do this sport. But yeah. So I mean, I think that, I mean, just the fact that we're that close in women's sports to something that was such a barrier for men is amazing. When you look at some of the studies that they do, if you read, Born to Run, and listen to some of Chris McDougall's talks, you know, women and men are very, very far apart in the faster, shorter distances. But as you climb up and up, when you get to the ultra marathons, like the women's times and men's times start to become way significantly closer to each other.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so it's amazing to see something like this happen on such a shorter distance scale. Like, I mean, could you imagine, a woman breaking, 150 in the 800, or a woman breaking 10 seconds in the 100? I mean, these are crazy things to process, that elite men are doing, and then here this is like, there's a woman that's about to tackle this barrier. And again, like, I mean, I know it's forever ago that Bannister did this, but in the grand scheme of things, it's less than 100 years. In less than 100 years, we're now looking at women possibly doing this. That's wild to me to see
Well,
that come on.
and someone brought up a great point at this. Bannister did that in the 1950s. Men had been running training early 1900s, late 1800s. I mean, women weren't even allowed to like race a mile until like the 70s, I think. I was listening to
Yeah.
something. It may have been in that the broadcast where they said that. And so if you think about that, women have only been training in this discipline for 50 years.
And again, think about a lot of these things like, like the first lady that ran the marathon, they thought women would die if they did the marathon again. They tried to pull her off of the race course
Yeah.
when I think it was Schweitzer or whatever, like was trying to run it, and they were trying to drag her off the course because like women weren't meant to run the marathon. There are still states in this country that in high school the girls run a shorter distance than the guys in cross country, which is just crazy to me. Like somehow men can tolerate a 5K, but women can't. In NCAA still, men are going to run the 10K, women are going to run the 6K. Why? What
Yeah.
are we trying to say here about this? And so you're right. I mean, at every turn, women have kind of been, denied some of the ability to have their talents, in the sport of distance running really shown. And so the fact that, it has that in the reality of what you're saying, the needle's been moved in only 50 years versus the needle being moved in thousands of years. I mean, the Olympics had male running in it, and again, the Olympics, ancient Olympics were only male, sports and stuff. So you're right. They've moved that needle significantly faster than men have moved that needle, in that time frame. And so, who knows what it looks like in the next 50 years with women's running.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to it. And I hope that, we get to see this again, just like we got to saw the breaking two. And, I think it'd be interesting to see if they pull some other ladies in and, go that route as well. But, the science they've got, there's not too much more to dial in. So it may just be a little bit more. And I'm sure Faith's training is pretty dialed in as well. So it may just come down, you and I talked an indoor track where you're not dealing with um, you know, wind at all. So that becomes a possibility. Or, I mean, if we're just going for the record, a downhill mile or something like that. So, if you want to do it on the track, then that becomes its own thing. But I mean, to me, it's, the money Nike has, they could build a giant indoor, a dome with a 400-meter track in it.
Maybe Faith just needs to come to the Louisiana Mile Festival at the Dave Anderson track at Ruston High School in Ruston, Louisiana, where in the last 3 years, we've had like 96% of people PR at the event. And we did find this year, I think every boy that won a state title in a distance event in Trackville, Louisiana, ran at the LA Mile Festival. So maybe, just maybe, she just needs to come on over here in March on an early morning where dreams come true. I know that's weird saying because I don't coach at Ruston, but somehow that track is magic. And we can get a little bit of history made for Louisiana in the same time.
There you go. Don't tell the BAA. They'll start imposing like a 5-second penalty on that track if too many people run fast. I, I had a great thing this week where my wife and I'm training her for the Pikes Peak Ascent that's coming up here in September. And so she used to run a lot and she had some tear in her meniscus and we've been she's been rehabbing that really hard and we're getting her back out there on some races. And so she did a run here in Colorado Springs called Rampart Range Road, which climbs up several thousand feet. And so she went up, I think, 4 miles or so, about 1,000 feet of climbing, and then came back down. And she'll post a little thing where she's like, "Oh, below average runner girl" or something like that. And I was like, "You literally just set like your third fastest time in like the mile, the 2 mile, and the 5K and the 1K on this uphill downhill run." Like you're doing great. And she was like, "Oh, like it's downhill, it doesn't count." And I was like, "Who are you, the BAA?" And I was like, I don't know if she understood the joke, but I was very proud of myself for that one.
Yeah. So two important facts for everyone to know here on this podcast is one, Rabo's very upset with the Boston Athletics Club for how
Always love them.
they keep tweaking the qualifying for the Boston Marathon. So Rabo has met the qualifying time for this next Boston Marathon,
2 years.
but Boston would like to make an adjustment to Rabo's time due to the fact that his race had a cumulative drop in elevation throughout the course of the race.
So
So
mine was actually under the cutoff, so I was actually fine. I was only like 1,000 feet of drop, 1,500, or excuse me, 1499. You're fine. 1,500 where they
1,500
draw the
it's a
line.
big
So
difference. So
mine was actually okay. But
Rabo's a little chippy about that, and two, I do. We don't talk about Rabo's wife very often on here, but am I correct that your wife like ran in Egypt when she was like in early high school, middle school? Like she's a world runner
that's it.
technically, right?
Yeah. Yeah. She has pictures of her running through the desert in a cross country race with the pyramids in the background. So yes, her family was military, so she actually went to middle school in Egypt, ran there. I was one time looking back at like the LHSAA like cross country results, I think for my sophomore year, and I was like scrolling through and then like I was like, hold on, and like her name was on there for the state meet, her freshman year of high school for airline. So yeah, she ran a bit back in Louisiana and North Carolina. She's gotten age group awards at races. So we're getting her trained up. We're actually this weekend we're going to drive up to the top of Pikes Peak and then we'll run down 3 miles and then back up to kind of let her see what the last couple of miles of the race is going to be like. So
Yeah. See, so I mean, she's got a more world renowned career than we have currently.
yeah, 100%, absolutely.
I'm not sure I'd want to run through the Sahara, but I'd love to be near the pyramids at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, so just a fun little fact that most people don't know when they see their local Colorado nurse that she's been putting in miles in different countries.
That's right, and we'll wrap up this one, and next year you can find all your Pikes Peak Ascent training plans on the Legacy Track Club website, because I'll be putting those up there for
Perfect.
Um, well, Vaulting, we're coming up here on time. I want to make sure that Zoom doesn't kick us off in the middle of it like it's done a couple of times. But so thank you everybody so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun and getting the chat. We'll be getting these out a little bit more regularly this summer, now that we're on a good cadence. Vaulting, do you have anything before we go?
Uh, you know, I I just came back from my trip to the Heartland Distance Summit, and I just want to say, no matter how long you've been doing this, you can always learn more. And so I encourage you guys to just continue to listen to this podcast and check out every avenue you can find, for ways to get knowledge. And then just like we tell you to do, make sure that it's not just enough to be dangerous, but enough to get you thinking, and exploring stuff a little more often and stuff. So I think that was my biggest takeaway from this weekend is listening to people and realizing there's still some cool new things that you can learn about this sport, no matter how long you've been in it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I always loved working with you about was there was never resting on the laurels. There was never, well, this is how we've always done it and this is how we're always going to do it. It's, we've talked several times about like if we pick up a book and we read a 200-page book and we get one thing out of it, then that book was useful. And so same thing with these clinics and just that natural curiosity. So yeah, always check it out. If you ever have any questions or you ever have a podcast topic you'd like us to go over, feel free to reach out. You can shoot us a message. I believe our emails are on the Wisdom of Coaches website, which is a great plug. Check out the Wisdom of Coaches website or hit us up on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube and let us know. Always would love to get some feedback and insight, and so we can tailor some of these towards whatever questions you might have. So. All right. Well, thank you everybody so much, and we will catch you guys next time.
Peace.